Joining us now to talk about all this, my pal, former Reagan economic advisor, Presidential Freedom Honor Reward recipient, the great Art Laffer, my pal. Arthur, this is, well, Newt Gingrich calls it big government socialism versus free enterprise or free market capitalism. Now, Gingrich and pollster John McLaughlin, whom you also know, they say the public is against this 2-1. What say you?
Well, I haven't done the polling on the public or not, but it's a terrible bill. It's a terrible thing to do, and it will lead to a long-run decline if it were to pass. I mean, when I look at this, I don't see how America could possibly like this. I remember when we came off the bows of Jimmy Carter, the issue was Reagan. I mean, all of a sudden we got the growth up. I think we won the '84 election, Larry, 49 states out of 50 with Reagan, and then we kept on that run as long as the prosperity went. So if I were a Republican today and this bill passed, I would count on winning the House and probably the Senate in 2022. And then what I would do is I would take this bill and put it up again and allow the House to repeal this bill verbatim and make all the Democrats vote for it again and again. And if it goes through, and have then Biden veto it until we get the presidency, we get everything again, and it'll be like the Republican era under Reagan. I don't know how any of the Democrats whom I know and who I respect and love could possibly go vote for this bill. It's just awful, and the public will not like it. They just can't.
Arthur, the Democrats that you know and respect, and me too, I mean, I used to be one of them, they're gone, Art. That's the problem. They're gone. And you've got this woke crowd. I mean, really, you take the R out of work and you got woke. I know there's an E, but it's sort of a
no, I liked it. I liked it.
Clever way to put it. You know,
it was great.
It's a hard job
yes,
hosting these shows.
Know.
But let me just say, those Democrats aren't around anymore, and that's going to be a political problem. But let me go back to the economics. All right, from the perspective of the Laffer curve and the incentive model of growth, which you made famous. What is this? Where does this come out on the Laffer curve and the incentive model of growth?
Well, the $1 trillion that you talk about tax increases over 10 years, that will not materialize. In fact, the Trump's tax cuts literally paid for themselves within 2 years of being enacted. So, you know, from the fourth quarter through the third quarter for 2 years. They paid for themselves. Reversing that process now and undoing those tax cuts and putting in all these tax increases, they won't pay for themselves. In fact, they will lose money because people will avoid them, they'll shelter them, and they'll just go out of work. It just won't happen. So that's the real problem here with this bill financially. And also politically, I mean, it'll lead to a long-term decline in the U.S. It's very scary, to be honest with you, but it's scary like Jimmy Carter was scary. This man, Joe Biden, is very scary on the left. And I think a lot of the Democrats ultimately are going to rue this day very much. And I would hope they would understand that before the vote on this bill, so they don't get caught in their own trap of being pressured by a very dictatorial process in the House and the Senate by Schumer and Pelosi to make them vote with it and then sacrifice their jobs. I hope they don't do that. And I hope you're wrong about Manchin. I hope Manchin really sticks to his guns here and really holds this in big paws. I'm
rooting for Manchin. Believe me, I want him to hold his ground.
I am too.
He doesn't have a great history, but you know, he said some good things in that Wall Street Journal editorial. But Art, let's go to the other side of the equation, the spending. I mean, whatever the estimates are going to be, $3.5 trillion, probably come to $5 trillion. But the point is, this exponentially raises the social safety net and the welfare dependency. And you have written about this from time to time. What's your take on this?
Well, this isn't really a social safety net at all. Not much of it is. It's really not a safety net. It's just a giveaway. And it's a huge giveaway. And whenever you transfer resources, I mean, the people who pay them, they'll produce less. The people who receive them, they also produce less. And what you'll have is much slower growth in the U.S. for as far as the eye can see. And it will lead to a very damaged U.S. economy if this bill were to be passed. And that's where you get the social safety net working. And by the way, giveaways of PPP and then forgive those loans, that's a giveaway too, Larry. It's all of these are just transfer payments, which always reduce output, clearly and completely. And that's where we are headed today in this bill. And
So-
it's got all this other stuff in there too, as you mentioned. It's just sickening. It makes you really sick to your stomach to see all this awful stuff in there. All these little taxes, all these little spending, the destruction of democracy. I mean, it's just awful.
I mean, the key point here is that the redistribution is not harmless. You're saying the redistribution will bring the entire economy down, and both sides, you know, taking from Peter and giving to Paul, Peter does worse and Paul won't do anything.
Let's imagine you took everything Peter had and gave all of it to Paul. How much would Peter work? Zero. How much would you then be able to take from him? Zero. What would you then give to Paul? Zero. Paul would stop working because everything he gets from the welfare. You know, if you have total redistribution, so everyone comes out exactly the same, there will be no output whatsoever, Larry. Perfect redistribution yields zero output. It's been always true, and it is now. I mean, it's just crazy. If everyone who works and produces loses all their income, gets taxed at 100%, and all those who don't work and don't produce receive everything, there won't be anything to produce. It'll be done.
You know, Bernie Sanders, I mean, to quote the Wall Street Journal editorial a couple of weeks back, Bernie Sanders is, in fact, running out of billionaires to tax. The assets owned by all his favorite billionaires still won't pay for all this stuff. So he's got that as a problem also.
I need to ask you one question, Larry. You've been an expert for years. I remember we've been friends since Bear Stearns days and all that, when you got all these awards from the Financial Analyst Journal and everything. What do you honestly believe, Larry, will be the chances of this bill passing, honestly?
I think probably in some tweaked way, it's better than 50-50. In other words, I don't think they're going to get all the tax hikes, and I don't think they're going to get all the spending. But I think they will get enough of both to do great damage to the economy and to demoralize society. That's what I think.
And then what's going to happen in 2022 in the election? Last question.
We should
10 seconds left.
Republicans should, you know, Republicans and independents will cream the Democrats. I mean, I think Democrats are going to walk away, voting Democrats, not necessarily congressional Democrats. But my concern, Art, is that between now and then, if you get this thing passed in some tweaked form, let's say towards November, December, first of all, it goes into place, and it does harm to the economy because the elections are, after all, speculative almost a year later. And second of all, I hear you about putting it up for a vote to reverse everything, but that's a really hard thing to do. And in fact, the tax hikes may be more easily reversible. It's the spending increases, the entitlements and the welfare and the cradle to grave stuff that's very hard to unwind historically, Art. And that's why I emphasize your point, how badly redistribution affects individuals and the economy.
It's awful. The only reason you have it put up for an exact vote is to make all the Democrats who voted for it the first time not be able to change their votes. And then you get into 2024, and that's when you get what a Reagan victory was. I mean, this is exactly what happened and then the victory there in 82, 84, boom. But you must hold the Democrats accountable for their votes. You know, people deserve the governments they get, and people need to know what they're getting on this thing.
Well,
and be able to make a decision on it.
Maybe, you know, maybe we can beat it. It's possible. Right now, Biden's at the short end of the political stick. His numbers are going way down from Afghanistan, but I'm not sure that transfers. We'll see. I'm not a political analyst, but we'll see. Hope springs eternal. That's why everything you say...
It does for me, too.
But everything you say, Art, against this is very important because we have to educate the public. Very important right now. And so we're going to have you on.
Well, you're doing a great job, Larry.
We're going to have you on 150 times between now and the final reconciliation vote. Art Laffer, we love you. Thanks ever so much for your time.
Thank you,
always.
Larry. Thank you very much.